I didn't iron my shirt. I hope it's not as obvious. Hi everyone and welcome to another video. Today is going to be a serious one. Grr. I wanted to talk about the Oscars, but I know a lot of people are already talking about the big categories. So things like Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Director, etc. So I wanted to focus today on talking about the Best Animated Feature nominations. I feel like animation in general is such an underappreciated art form. A lot of people look down on animated films, usually calling them, just for children. While I understand that a lot of people within the industry don't necessarily put a lot of effort when they're making like children's film or television, it doesn't mean that some of these animated films are not accessible for people who are beyond a certain age group. That is also to say that there are not animated films that are, targeted for adults, because there are a lot of them out there. In fact, one of them is actually nominated this year. This underappreciation even goes further into the people within the Oscars, because there was this whole controversy where an Oscar voter actually admitted that they didn't give a about animated films, and it just makes you like, why? Do you hate fun? Are you okay? So I want to do a video where I review all the best animated feature nominees, just to highlight and give appreciation to the people who made these films, because animation requires a lot of time and work. Did you know Memoir of a Snail, one of the nominations this year, took 8 years to make? I cook for about 5 minutes and then I get so frustrated. I can't imagine working on something for like 8 years. But the hard work definitely shows, because these films are incredibly well directed, well written, well crafted, and also well acted too. For this year, the lineup is incredibly stacked. All the films here are bangers, like there are no duds at all for this year. So I'm excited to talk about them today. I was debating whether I should do like a recap or a summary of the plot of the films, but then I decided against it, because I wanted to encourage the people who watch this video to go watch these films after you watch this video. Like, don't click away. The good thing about these films are, and this is for those people who keep saying they don't have time to watch anything, these films are incredibly short, I guess, in comparison to like all the other films nowadays. Wallace and Gromit is about 80 minutes long, and that is also including credits, and at most these films are about like 110 minutes long. So rather than hate watching Amelia Perez, why don't you give one of these films a watch? Make better use of your time. Without further ado, let's just get on to the review.
So what are you going to name them?
I assign to you, Gosling. 0001.
The Wild Robot is directed and written by Chris Sanders of Lilo and Stitch fame. And the story follows a robot that's accidentally dropped into the wilderness. This robot is named Ross. Ross is meant to help people like do chores basically, and she tries so hard to do her purpose amidst all of these animals, but she ends up doing more harm than good, because you know what, this is not her domain, so things are a little bit awkward for her. At some point she destroys a nest and destroys a whole bunch of eggs, with the exception of this one egg, and this one egg hatches, and the gosling ends up imprinting on Ross, and Ross has to take up the role of the gosling's mother. The story that follows is Ross trying to take care of this gosling that she named Brightbill, and how she has to teach Brightbill how to fly before the next migration. This film is good, but I mean, honestly, like all the nominations this year are good, but this film is very emotional. And when I say emotional, I mean like really, really, really emotional. When I walked out the theater, I don't think there was any dry eyes. Everyone's just crying in this film, and for good reason. I'm not a mother, so I don't know how this film accurately portrays the life of like a parent, but centering the heart of the film on the relationship between Ross and Brightbill is such a good idea, because then like, it creates a lot of emotions, it creates conflict and stakes, and it's such a good way of showing just how Ross gradually becomes more human. And I think the development as well is also shown very vividly through the animation as well as the performance by Lupita Nyongo. The animation is also really good. It looks like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, in which, it looks 2D, but then it also looks 3D, so you can't tell like what is happening, but it looks aesthetically pleasing. It just fits the vibe of the wilderness, okay? The aesthetic, it just fits the vibe. It doesn't look as polished as like a Disney animated film, but it also looks, there's some grit into it. Like you can just feel the dirt of the wilderness, which I appreciated and really liked about this film. The only thing that I'm a little bit about the film is the fact that it feels like this film is just like an audio visual representation or a cinematic representation of like when someone is telling you a story, and then they go, and then this happened, and then this happened, in a sense that it feels like a succession of events are just happening. It gets a little bit confusing, but not to the point that I wasn't able to follow the story. But it's just like, it just feels like the film moves a little bit too fast, and this is one of those films that I think could have benefited from a bit more time. Like, I won't mind if the film runs for 120 minutes, just to give the story more time to breathe and to let the audience sit a bit more with the emotions. You know, apart from that, like, it's a very enjoyable movie. It's such a good film. It's very emotional, so if you're watching this, you kind of can expect that you might cry, so just have a box of tissue nearby. And I think this film is just such a good exploration of, you know, like the complexity that comes with parenthood, even though I don't know what it means to be a parent, but I think the film does a good job of showing it. Flow is directed by zilbalodis and also written by him alongside his writing partner matiss kaza. It's a very simple story where you just follow this cat in like the wilderness, because the wilderness suddenly gets flooded and the water is rising and stuff like that, so the cat has to evacuate and find another place to live. But along this journey, the cat meets all sorts of different animals and just kind of have to learn how to like cooperate, I guess, with each other to get themselves to safety. That's a film. Very simple story. This film is notable because it doesn't have any dialogue at all. I feel like Gints films are always like silent films, but I think he does such a great job of conveying the emotions and whatever is happening just through the visuals and the sound design, as well as the score, because he also does music, so you can definitely see how the music kind of adds into the film as well. Obviously, the sound design is done incredibly well, because I feel like this film really hinges on like the visual and the audio. I think the animation is not as polished as like a DreamWorks or a Disney film, but it works for this film. The simplicity of it all just adds into it, and it has like this video game feel to it. It just makes for an aesthetic, in my opinion. And because of that, this film kind of reminds me of this video game called Stray in a good way too. I really like this film because I feel like with a lot of films, people are just like dumping you with a lot of lore, with a lot of like plot twists and things like happening all over and stuff like that. But I like that this film is just very simple. You're just following this cat as it goes on a journey to get into safety. And I think there's something in that simplicity that's just comforting, I guess, in my opinion. It's such a fun watch, and it's such a cozy watch as well. I think like coziness is such a big thing in these films, but because of the simplicity of the plot, I can see a lot of people thinking that the film isn't as engaging, because you're just like, you know, what are you going to do? It's just like the cat being, you know, moved from one location to another, and it might feel like the cat is not an active protagonist. A lot of the time when you're writing scripts or you're making films or you're writing your novels, a lot of people are going to ask you, you know, to make your protagonist more active, because it's just more exciting for people to follow this protagonist. But the cat in this one doesn't feel as active, but I feel it makes up for it in the way that there's just something weird about this forest. It feels like there's a mystery and we're discovering it alongside the cat. So in a weird way, this cat is kind of like this audience surrogate. One of the reviews for this film pointed out that the animals here feel very animalistic in a way that they're not humanoid. But I think that's part of the appeal of this film. And I think it's also interesting that this very, you know, like cat that's very cat-like is our audience surrogate. So there's something interesting there. So I think what the movie did well is that the animals feel like actual characters, but the setting itself also feel like a character, because there's just so much mystery surrounding whatever is scattered in the forest, that the forest just feels liminal in like a good way. It's very mysterious. It's a vibe. It's not cottagecore vibe. It's just a vibe. It's a vibe. It's a vibe. I think you'll understand when you see the film. Like, after you watch this video, go watch the film and then go back here and then tell me that you also feel the forest is liminal. Don't make me feel like I'm a crazy person here.
Hello, everybody. Oh my gosh, I am just such a huge fan of yours, and now here I am.
Inside Out 2 is directed by Kelsey Mann and written by Meg Leboeuf and Dave Holstein. It is set a couple of years after the first Inside Out, and now the main girl, Riley, is a teen. She's going through puberty. Being a teenager means facing a new set of challenges, and with that, she has new emotions. And these emotions are more complex than the main 5 that we saw in the previous film. One of the new emotions is anxiety, and anxiety comes in conflict with joy a lot. That is basically the plot. So anxiety is trying to like take control of Riley to make sure that Riley is, you know, setting herself up for success. I have a confession to make because the first Inside Out traumatized me, but not in a bad way, like in a good way, because that film is so good, but it also makes me feel some type of way that I just don't want to rewatch it. This is going into the list of films that I watch once and that's enough. There's Requiem for the Dream, and then there's Inside Out. But nonetheless, this film is so good in that it has such a nuanced message about the importance of being able to sit and just feel your emotions. Because a lot of times you're kind of forced into brushing off your emotions or repressing your emotions for the sake of like always seeming happy and preppy. So I think the fact that this film kind of tells you like, hey, it's okay to be sad, it's okay to feel other emotions, especially as you're growing up. Like, I think that's incredibly significant because the first Inside Out is so good. It makes me incredibly skeptical of this sequel, even though there are obviously a lot of ways that you can go about approaching the story of someone growing up and the emotions that come with it. But I kind of decided like it's not really a priority for me to watch this film. I only watched this film because I was doing this video, but needless to say, I actually enjoyed the film. I thought it was funny, it was gorgeously animated, and it was also incredibly thoughtful. I appreciated that they still, you know, have the through line of like some emotions are not meant to be repressed or brushed off, but it also goes above and beyond of being like some emotions are not something that you can conquer or fix just like that. Sometimes it's something that you have to live with, but there are ways in which you can manage the emotion before it kind of gets the best of you, and it's evident in the way that they portray anxiety. A lot of people are talking about how this is such a good film to show people how anxiety works or how anxiety manifests, and good on them. I'm glad that at least this film, you know, even though it's not a sequel that I want to see, I'm glad that there is some good that comes from this sequel. But I'm always so in awe in the way that they creatively portray whatever is going on in our heads. Like, it's just funny, like the sarcasm, deep dark secret, repressed emotions, putting emotions into a jar. Like, it's just funny to me. Like, so yeah, it's not bad. It's pretty good.
Cracking toast, Gromit.
Wallace and Gromit: A Vengeance Most Foul is directed by Nick Park and Merlin Crossingham and is written by Mark Burton from a story by Nick Park and Mark Burton. One day, Wallace and Gromit find out that they are in financial trouble, but Wallace got this brilliant idea where he can use the robot gnome that he invented to help Gromit with his garden, and they basically create like a gardening service. But things go awry when notorious criminal Feathers McGraw got his clutches onto these robot gnomes. Out of all the films in this list, this one is probably my favorite, which I didn't expect at all. I didn't really grow up with Wallace and Gromit. I know Shaun the Sheep because it's always like airing in Indonesia, but I never really got the appeal of it. Maybe because I just don't get the humor, nor do I really understand the amount of effort that goes into the making of these films and series. I think it's mainly because of the humor part. I know a lot of people find it funny, but I grew up with Madagascar and Shrek, so some of the humor doesn't land for me. But as I grow older and my sense of humor kind of develop, I'm starting to understand why people really like Wallace and Gromit. I haven't revisited Shaun the Sheep, so I don't know how I feel about that, but for Wallace and Gromit, I now see the appeal of the films. Like, they're just so cute, they're so fun. A Vengeance Most Foul feels like a cross between Hot Fuzz and Paddington in the way that it is witty, action-packed, and tightly written. But there's also a sense of like coziness to this film. It's just so heartwarming. Like, I just love it. I was like grinning from ear to ear because of how fun it is. I don't like being sad. I just want to have fun. And this film just reminds me how much you can like create a nice, meaningful film that is also fun and entertaining. And to me, there is nothing more valuable than being able to have fun and to escape with films. Like, that's the whole reason why I love films and why I got into filmmaking in general. Beyond just being able to have fun, I do appreciate the commentary that this film is trying to make on like AI and how people just kind of jump into conclusion despite not having a lot of proof, especially, you know, within the internet age. And then they do it without really like referencing the internet, which is really impressive. But beyond that, I'm just really in awe of the craft that goes into the making of this film. It's just sometimes like I watch a sequence and I'm like, how did they even do that? Like, that is so impressive. Like, that is amazing. And a combination of like, oh my god, I'm having so much fun, and I bet this film takes so much work. Both of those things just makes me appreciate the film even more and makes me, admire the film more. I really, recommend people to watch this film, especially because it's so short. But yeah, just definitely give it a watch. It's on Netflix too, and it's so much fun. I love it. Please watch it.
He was always practicing.
Memoir of a Snail is written and directed by Elliot, and the movie is narrated by the main character, Grace Puddle, as voiced by Sarah Snook. Grace here recounts her story, her upbringing with her twin brother who got separated from her after their father passed away, with her new life with her foster family in Canberra, where she meets this whimsical older woman who subsequently becomes her best friend, and her journey into adulthood where she tries to find love and tries to battle her loneliness. Basically, the movie recounts the trials and tribulations that Grace experiences within her life. Something I have to say and warn people about this film, because it's set in like 1970s, 80s, 90s. There are some parts of it that can be triggering to some people. I know the whole topic about trigger warnings in the beginning of a film can be quite controversial, but I also believe in people having like at least a choice to create a safe space when they're consuming media, especially because they're the ones, paying with their time and their money. If you want to watch the film and you're kind of like, oh, what are the trigger warnings? I will put them in the comment section below. I'll try to make sure they're under the read more so people who don't want to be spoiled won't get spoiled. This film is notably the second adult animated film that is nominated for the Oscars, and I'm like a little bit surprised by that actually. I thought there will be a bit more. But don't let the cute character design fool you. This film is sad and depressing. But I guess that's just Elliot films for you, While the film is depressing, I do have to give it to them because it feels like when I was watching the film, it's like I'm walking through a dark tunnel and then I'm just walking towards this like light at the end of it. Yeah, that's how I feel when I watch the film. It's just like you have to get yourself through whatever darkness in order for you to find the light in it. And the message overall for this film is definitely, worth all the depression that you go through watching this film. But yeah, it's just a very emotional film. I think it's incredibly well crafted. I think in general, all these films are incredibly well crafted. The only reason why it might seem like I don't like Memoir as much is because it's so sad. Like, it's such a sad film. I like having fun. I like repressing emotion. People behind Inside Out not being very happy with me. But this film is just like, oh my god, such a reminder, because even though it looks whimsical and it looks fantastical and stuff like that, this film is very close to truth in a way that it's slice of life. It's not hard to imagine that there might be someone out there like Grace who experienced all these hardships and stuff like that. That's why I'm like, oh god, Grace, you poor thing. But the movie is still good, and especially if you enjoy these kinds of films, like I think you'll enjoy this film as well. I'm just too chicken to like depressing films, All that aside, this movie is technically impressive as well. Before the screening of my film, there's a little message from Elliot where he's telling the audience everything is animated using stop motion and using the clay. And I'm just like, oh my god, some of these things you guys animated it, like it's on the camera, it's on the screen. This is just so impressive. Like, this is amazing. Like, how did you guys even do this? But then I remember he made it for 8 years and I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I'm just so amazed at how creative people are. Like, are so awesome. Yeah, the film is good. It's just depressing, but I think Sarah Snook, she had such a great performance in this one, especially because she's just delivering a whole monologue throughout the film, so it really hinges on her performance, and I think she delivered. Not my cup of tea, but still pretty good. So yeah, everyone, those are my reviews for the 2025 Oscar Best Animated Feature nominations. If I were to do a ranking for the films, I would say number 1 is A Vengeance Most Foul, then Flow, then The Wild Robot, then Memoir of a Snail, then Inside Out. But regardless, I recommend all of these films. Definitely give them a watch if you can. Let's all get together and just give appreciation to animated films. They're so underrated. Beyond just being technically impressive, I feel like these films are genuinely well written, directed, acted, crafted. All of them are just so good. Even if you don't make it into an animated film, it still will be a good film. I just think that being in animation just elevates it even further. And I think this is something that people miss about these animated films. Like, they don't understand just how animation elevates the story even more. All these films have such good message about empathy and love, and they just transcend being kids' film, okay? But don't watch Memoir of a Snail with your kids. It's definitely not a film for children. I think Flow might win Best Animated Feature this year, mostly because that's what's been winning the major awards these past few ceremonies. I don't like betting, but I think like Flow might have this one. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments if you've watched this film. What do you think of them? Which one is your favorite? How would you rank them as well? Which one do you think will win the Oscar? If you like this video, please give it a like too, and maybe even subscribe. I post daily shorts and one long form video every week. Yeah, I have nothing else to say, so I will end the video here. Bye and have a good day. Bye.